Happy as Lazzaro, 2018 Italian film, original title Lazzaro Felice. It's a modern day fairy tale, a drama containing quite a lot of magical elements in it, even though initially it may not seem that way. The film starts with introducing us to the titular Lazzaro, who is a teenage boy living in a small Italian village specializing in production of tobacco. He is this very pure, kind, simple, naive even boy. Always follows instructions, always helps out other people, never complains, never asks for anything, just a saint essentially. And initially, based on the level of technological advancement and the infrastructure that the village has and the clothing, we assume that this is a poor village somewhere in the 1950s, maybe a little bit later. But as time goes on, we learn that this place is completely cut off from the outside world because of a fallen bridge over a river, and the only people who have direct contact with the villagers are a rich marquisa and her people. And we come to the realization that the time period is actually much later, and that she is essentially exploiting their slave labor, not allowing anybody to leave, not paying anybody wages, instead letting them believe that it is still legal to own people, for workers to have an absolute master and then work for that master without any hopes or perspectives. But things may possibly change when the Marquise's teenage son arrives in the village with her and enlists the help of Lazzaro in one of his schemes. And the story goes from there, and you expect some things to happen, but the movie has a pretty unexpected pivot around the middle where things get very wildly different. And there's a fantastical element introduced at the same time, and in general there's just a major shift in tone, and that shift and the contrast between the movie's two halves was probably my favorite thing about it, specifically the way those stark differences between village and city, between nature and civilization, even the warm color palette and the cold washed grays, the way all those contrasts are used to make a point that on a fundamental level humans stay who they are. There is a really sad observation that the movie makes, which has to do with the unchanging human nature, the way people act fundamentally the same way they are taught to act, regardless of the circumstances that they may find themselves in. The poor hustlers remain poor hustlers. The rich cons remain rich cons. And Lazzaro, the only innocent in the entire picture, remains innocent. I think it's also a story of people who have very little and trade that away for even less. And as such, it is a fairly sad and melancholic story. It made me feel very hollow when it ended, when all was said and done. And it has an air of hopelessness about itself, despite the main protagonist being so pure himself. I think it's because he's surrounded by so many ultimately sad and pitiful people. It's their stories that come to the forefront. I do want to say that the movie looks fantastic. I think it was shot on film because it has that old movie look. And as I said earlier, the two halves of the film are wonderfully contrasted visually. The warm open plains of nature, mountains and fields, and then the cold, soulless jungle of the city. Final point, Adriano Tardiolo is wonderful as Lazzaro. I've read that he was not even a professional actor, and this was his first movie role. So, and I think, maybe not so, but rather because of it, I think that helped capture the innocence and sort of otherworldliness of the character. And when the movie ended, I thought to myself, I think it was good, but I'm not sure I can exactly explain why. There's some sort of elusive quality about it, which I think elevates it slightly from decent to solid, in my opinion.